Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are kicking off today with your future major donors are closer than you think. So let me start off by introducing ourselves. I'm going to hand over to Alex first to tell you who he is.
Hi, yeah, I'm Alex. I'm the marketing manager here at Compuco. I do lots of the organization and kind of communications around the webinar, and we'll be speaking a little bit later, though today Louise will be our main star.
Thank you, Alex. So my name's Louise and I'm the Chief Growth Officer. So I'm basically working with all of our potential clients and existing clients and just wanting to understand their needs and making sure we find the right digital solutions for their organization. I will tell you that my background was as a fundraiser for many years, working for lots of different organizations. So I've worked for community organizations, university fundraising, local hospices, and worked across all different types of fundraising as well. But I did end up specializing in major donor fundraising. So hence this title of the topic today. We've got a brief agenda here, but actually what I realized was going through this earlier, there's an awful lot of content. I kind of wanted to share all of my knowledge. So we're going to just touch on lots of different things and we might need to speed through it. So I will ask maybe for any questions at the end and just, bear with me. It's a lot of information, but I'm really excited to share it all with you. So let's just start off by talking about what is a major donor to you. Every charity has its own definition of a major donor. So it could be donors who give over £1,000 makes them a major donor, or it could be over £25,000 or any other number in between. I personally have worked for organizations where £1,000 made you a major donor and other organizations where £25,000 made you a major donor. And you can also have different giving levels even within one organization. So you can have a major donor might be from £5,000 and above, but then, if you give 25,000, you actually maybe get even more extra VIP treatment. And it's okay to have different levels even within your major donor area. So the main thing to do is for you to define it yourself and really just have a clear understanding of what major donor means to your organization. So the levels can be public if you want them to be, and they could be given related names and you could list the benefits. So I'm just giving some examples here. You could have a friend of the organization, an ambassador, a major donor, a patron, and they could all have different levels of financial gift attached to them. You could use the regular bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. You could get creative and have names that actually relate to your organization. We're working with lots of different nature-based organizations, so I got some inspiration there. And another thing you could think about is having a young level, a young major donor level, and call it a young patron or whatever it may be. And that would be recognizing a gift from a young person, set your age brackets, maybe 21 to 30, whatever it may be. And if they're giving £500, £200, £1,000, a significant gift, you could actually give them some extra special treatment at that level, recognizing you're nurturing someone from a young age so that when they are older, they can give a lot more. So we're talking about what kind of treatment might be given. So I would say there are sort of official benefits and unofficial benefits. So the official benefits would be the public facing ones that you talk about. So things like inviting major donors to special events that are just for them. So it gives that feeling of special treatment. You could offer to list their names on the website if they wanted to, or in a list of honors at your end of year report, if you had a magazine, newsletter, if they wanted to. You could also offer special tours or interactions with beneficiaries, obviously, depending on the kind of organization that you are. So those are more public facing things, but behind the scenes, when a donor gets to a certain level, it means they might get different treatment behind the scenes. So what does that mean? It could mean they have a dedicated fundraiser. So someone whose role it is to really just nurture that individual, be their contact, be the face of the organization for them, and really build a relationship with them. It could be producing bespoke reports about specific projects. You might have major donors who've contributed specifically to a certain project. And you might want to create a special report just for them to see, especially if it's a really significant gift. And of course, tailored emails as well, geared to their level of giving and interest. So they won't know about these things being special treatment, but they'll get them anyway. So it's really important to know who your major donors are, because they're going to be your best supporters and most engaged and most likely to help you succeed in finding more major donors or giving more money. So we would recommend, having a strong CRM to support your fundraising efforts, not only recording all the donations that come in, but being able to segment your contacts and therefore divide them up and be really clear about all the different levels within your organization's giving. So you can segment donors by giving amounts, you could give them specific tags, or you could even add them into dynamic groups. So you could have criteria for a group that once a donor gives above a certain level, they're automatically entered into this mailing group or a group that would be invited to certain events. And then that would automatically update for you, making sure you're definitely clear, you're capturing everyone who should be captured in that group. Because ultimately you want to nurture your major donors. You want to ensure that they're getting a positive impression all the time and you've not forgotten about them or missed them off a list. Because you want to secure their continued support. Giving a one-off major donor gift is amazing, but really you want them to give year on year. And also, which we're going to touch on a lot more later, is that they may be able to unlock potential future major donors. So let's dig in. How to find your next major donors. So how do you attract them? Well, obviously the dream is that they just come to you, and it does happen. We've all had those magic moments where someone has just contacted you out of the blue and said they heard about your organization, they want to make a significant gift, but it doesn't happen that often. You do need to work at it a little bit. So different ways to attract them through events, specific fundraising campaigns, tapping into trust and foundation opportunities, data mining within your own contacts already, nurturing relationships, and networking. Now, honestly, I think each of these could be a webinar by themselves, but I'm just going to try and cram everything in, as I said earlier, and talk you through a little bit about each one of these areas. So let's start with campaigns. So how do they work? So setting a target for a specific goal. Now, that goal could be a financial goal, it could be a project goal, you want to achieve something, or it could be both. But basically, you want to have a clear call to action with a specific aim, which can really help inspire generosity when it's really clear what you're asking for. So here we're going to give an example here. Let's say the St. Luke's Hospice Christmas campaign, and they want to raise £100,000 by the 24th of December to be able to fund 24-hour nursing care over the holidays. So that's a really specific campaign. It's got urgency. It tells you what it's going to do. And, it feels like you want to react to this. You want to support this campaign. So another thing you can do within the campaign is having suggested giving amounts, which can really help increase someone's donation. If you ask, you set that kind of target and it's like, well, what should I give? If you can guide people to giving, that can actually help increase their amount. So here we've given some suggestions. Not only are we asking for specific amounts, but we're telling you what that amount can actually do for the campaign. And if you want to use some extra marketing techniques, you can even highlight the one that you really think is the most common one that people will go for. Now, it may be that people might not give that £2,000 straight away, but if they're going to give £500 and it's their first ever gift, that's going to tell you something. And you might want to research into them a bit more and engage with them a bit more and see if they can become a major donor in your charity. Although £500 might be a major donor in your charity. I'll also make mention of specific project campaign examples. So capital campaigns are really good for really bringing out big major donors. When you're physically building something, there's going to be a physical result. And obviously the money involved in building something is much higher. So let's say you, building a new school in Nepal, you can set these big amounts. And you can also offer naming opportunities, and naming opportunities are great. Now, not everybody likes a naming opportunity. Not everyone wants their name somewhere, but this is something that major donors could, it's a really nice thing you can do to like honor them and thank them for their gift. It could be in their name, in memory of someone, all sorts of things. And also, the other example here is sponsoring a child for a year of healthcare. Again, very specific, a specific ask, a specific amount of money. And then, of course, you want to make sure you can communicate your campaign to the right supporters, and that's got to be supported by strong marketing. So you need well-written and well-designed materials. There are all different ways to get it out there. Direct mail is still a great way to engage with certain people, depending on where you are in the world and who your supporters are. Online, of course, we know is really the most common way at the moment, or an in-person appeal at an event. You basically just need to make sure that the right people see it and make sure you're identifying the right people. So with segmentation within your database, within your CRM, you can target people who've given large amounts before, checking your fundraising donation reports, people who've given to similar campaigns before, so checking the records of donations that might have gone to specific projects and retargeting them, or people who have registered interest in a certain area. So if you've got opportunities to capture interest areas at the sign up, any kind of sign up that you do within your organization, ask them what particular project areas are of interest if you're doing lots of different things within your organization. And of course, at events, always try and capture interest at sign up there. And surveys, you can just send out a survey and ask people what they're interested in. So we're going to move into events, which are a great way to engage existing supporters. So we're going to encourage them to give more, and we're going to attract new major donors. So what kinds of events? I'm just going to give a few examples of what kind of events can work best. So VIP events, if you can get access to a unique environment or unique experience, that is a great way to try and advertise people, to come along who are being able to have the capacity to become a major donor. Gala dinners and big events where you can ask your existing supporters and your existing major donors to be a table host, and then invite all of their friends to come. And then you can run a dedicated appeal, again, a campaign type appeal, potentially asking for a specific project with a specific amount attached to it. Or a speaker event. So again, now a speaker event, listen, if you've got access to celebrities, that's great. Local celebrities, lovely. But it actually can just be someone really interesting who can talk on a really engaging topic that can be related to your organization, and then people will want to come. These kinds of events can be large events in like an auditorium, or they can be intimate. And I'll talk a bit more about intimate events a bit later on. But either way, it will be an amazing networking opportunity, because you could also target professionals. You can have speaker events that are related to specific types of professions where, within that profession, there's chances are there's going to be a major donor in there. So those are a few kinds of examples. Of course, your priority invites will be targeted at your existing major donors, but it can also be your most influential supporters, because even if they're not major donors themselves, they could be very influential in terms of the role or job that they have or how they're connected. Also, they're going to be your best ambassadors if they're also the most engaged supporters. You also need to back this up with having an organized, efficient, and welcoming event management process. You want invitations to be good. You want your booking system to be easy to use. You need to communicate all the instructions for attendance at the event. And you need to have strong event follow-up. If you've done an appeal at the event, you need to follow up easily with the amount they pledged, online payment instructions, and maybe some information about what they've given to. You might want to offer a feedback form where you can then ask for areas of interest for the next thing, tell them about the next event. You want to make sure you've got a system that can, there's no point doing events if you can't then support the event in terms of booking and then the follow-up. Otherwise, you're just losing an opportunity there. Now, a personal fundraiser to engage, to build relationships. So at an event, whatever size event you're running, I would always encourage you to research everybody who is coming and really see who your main prospects might be. I would also say, if it's a big event and you don't know what they look like, you don't know where they'll be, Google them and get a photo of them in your brain, or save it somewhere in your phone to sneak at. So you can find them easily, because events are really short periods of time and you really need to use that time wisely. And I would always say, make a strategy. Again, if you're at a big event with a structured agenda, there's not that much time for networking necessarily. So make a strategy. If they're sat at a table, know what table they're sat at, decide at what point in the event you're going to go to that table, and try and plan it out, basically. I would always say about how do you engage with them? Ask them questions, you know, build a relationship. You are the face of the charity, and they've got to get to know you. You've got to warm up. Don't necessarily go straight in with pitching what your organization's about and what kind of money you need. Gauge their level of interest. And what I would suggest is secure a follow-up. Don't launch into it necessarily then, because you'll only have a few minutes. Like, say to them, I'd love to tell you more about all of this. Can I call you? Can I meet you for a coffee? Whatever it is, try and secure that follow-up. And then personalize that follow-up. So make sure you get back to them the next day if possible, and reference what you spoke about and try and book in that meeting or that phone call. And then I'd always say, record the information. Again, go back to your office or your system, make sure you write down who you spoke to, what event it was at, what did you talk about, what were they interested in, because honestly, you're not going to remember it all 3 weeks later necessarily when you meet for a coffee. And I would also say, if you find out any personal information, write that down as well and reference back to it, because it makes them feel like you've really listened, really engaged, really remembered who they are. And honestly, I can't remember those kinds of personal details. And especially if you meet a few people, you might get muddled up with who's got kids where or whatever it is. So write it down. And the tip I would say is sometimes move away from a conversation, take yourself to a corner and quickly type it up in your phone if you've got an opportunity, because, you know, that information is really, really helpful for the future for engaging with someone. Oh, here we go. There it says, record the interaction. Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. And then set reminder tasks to contact them. So you've sent the follow-up, put a reminder into your system to remind yourself to follow up a week later or whatever it may be. Don't let it go. Make sure you continue the interaction. And we're actually going to do a whole webinar about events and automating things next month. Just that's a little plug there. So let's move on to trusts and foundations. So firstly, what's the difference between a trust and foundation? Honestly, for us, absolutely nothing. They are basically the same thing. It's just about how they got set up in the first place. We don't really need to worry about that. What we need to worry about is, who are they for? Who is the money for? Now, it could be that they have a specific directive and the money is only for supporting certain types of activities, or it could be at the discretion of the trustees. So the only other thing we need to worry about as well is, how do you access the funds? So it could be through a formal application process, or it could be through a personal proposal. You just need to be really clear about what kind of trust and foundation you're talking to, but it really doesn't matter if they're a trust or a foundation. So how do you find trusts and foundations? So the starting point, I would say, is to look back through your own archives. Obviously, if you're a relatively new organization, that might not be so helpful. But if you are an older organization, really, there might be trusts and foundations that used to give to you and for whatever reason have dropped off. And that would be your starting point to try and re-engage with them. I would say, look at who's funding your, not competitors, but, you know, sister charities. I don't know what the right word is there, but look who is funding people who are doing similar work to you. And then obviously, if they're giving to them, there's a high chance they will also give to you as well. And there are lots of free resources as well. So you've got to research options within your own country, but we've given a few examples here of free resources in the UK. And, you know, we will be sending this video around tomorrow. So, you know, you'll have access to these. You don't need to write it all down now. And oh, there's another one. Sorry, charity version. There are paid resources as well. So there are quite a few paid resources. So you need to decide if you've got the budget for this. I would also say you need to decide if you've then got, if it turns out, you know, it's a proposal application process, you've got to make sure you've got somebody who's going to be able to fill in the application for you. So I wouldn't start paying for things if you're not going to be able to really like follow through and actually do the applications. But you know, I would also say you might have opportunities within your current supporters. So they might themselves be trustees of some of these trusts and foundations and be able to help you with your application, or at least getting your proposal in front of the board. So trusts and foundations, considering them as major donors. So if someone gives a gift from a personal trust, so there'll also be people who have family trusts, and it's, you know, a personal proposal you've made and it's at their own discretion, well, that person will become the major donor. And equally, if there's a gift from an application process, the trust or foundation will become the major donor. But you might still have an individual to engage with, and actually you probably want to treat them as a major donor, even if it's not directly their gift. They are the representative of the trust or foundation who is the major donor. So one thing we would recommend doing is using a soft credit in your database, in your CRM, to avoid a duplicate ask. So the trust or foundation will make the donation and it will be on their record, but you want to know that, you know, Sarah Smith is the representative. So you might want to soft credit her so that A, she gets invited to all the relevant things and is given the right VIP treatment, but B, you're not asking her for another donation like she's already given. And you want to remember to put the individuals into the right mailing groups to make sure they get the right communications, regular engagement, all of those things. So moving on to major donors being a bit closer than you might think. So we're going to start off looking at mining your data. So there may well be lots of opportunities within your existing contact data, but how to identify them. So start off, we'll say to do a report on postcodes is great. You know where the great roads are in your local area, or generally if you've got global supporters, you know where the affluent areas are. So run a report on postcodes or areas and see if there's anyone in there that's given a gift to you at some point. And it might be a small gift. It might have been £50, £100, but maybe they've got the opportunity to give more if you reach out to them and personally engage with them. Likewise, look at people's job titles or look at the companies that they work for, which will give you an indication of their maybe potential to actually be able to give a bigger gift. I'd also suggest doing a report on lapsed major donors. So like I mentioned, you know, looking at lapsed trusts and foundations, maybe there are people who've given bigger gifts in the past. Can you get them back? Can you re-engage with them? Why have they stopped giving? And of course, as we mentioned, researching relevant trusts and foundations, and then look at the ones that are relevant to you, and then look at the list of trustees and just check and see if anyone is in your database, because you never know. Then we'll talk a little bit about nurturing relationships. So major donor fundraising is really all about relationship building, because you never know who could lead to your next big donation. So I would suggest starting within your trustee board. I would meet with each member and explore their contacts, because they're on your board of trustees. They believe in your organization and they're lending their expertise in whatever the capacity is. But that doesn't mean they can't still help you with fundraising, contacts, opportunities, networks. You'd be surprised, people who are just like, not in that mindset, like, I'm a trustee of the charity and this is what I do. It's like, but you could also help open doors for us in a fundraising capacity. You don't have to do the fundraising. You just need to open the door and make the introduction. However, you could have a dedicated major donor or fundraising trustee or a committee chair, someone who knows that's why they're there, that's what they're volunteering for, someone who's either themselves a major donor, well connected, and just wants to help open doors. That's what you're asking them to do. Again, you can do the fundraising, but they need to help open those doors. And I would always say, you know, within your own organization, just, you know, you can nurture relationships amongst your own staff or volunteers who could be well connected. It may not be themselves, it could be themselves. Always check your volunteers, you know, maybe they themselves are going to have the potential, but nurture them and see, again, it's all about opening doors, nurturing relationships. And then we talk about growing relationships. So again, starting with your most loyal and engaged major donors, they're already a certain level of capacity of giving. So it's likely that they're going to know other people who are at the same capacity to give, the same potential capacity. So one thing you might do is ask them to host an event. I'm seeing this work really well in multiple organizations. The event could be in their office or in their home, and you can bring along a speaker or a beneficiary to tell their story, or an interesting speaker to talk about a topic related to your organization, or a general topic that's just interesting, that will encourage the major donor to invite their friends to come to their home, come to their office in an intimate environment, and just become engaged with the organization that they're already supporting. And you can use the event to build new relationships, to do that networking and engagement piece. Again, it doesn't need to be an appeal event. It doesn't need to be going straight in with an ask. It's about building relationships with the right people who can be potential major donors. Now, it may be also your most loyal and engaged major donors might be happy to send emails or make phone calls and do the asking themselves. It really just depends who you've got, really. And I've seen all sorts of different levels over the years. And the last point here about growing relationships is legacy. Now, legacy in itself is a whole other topic, but not only your major donors, but anyone who is a supporter of your organization at any level could become a legacy donor in the future. And often legacy gifts are large. They are often, classified in that major donor category. And I would say, if that's something you've not really thought about in terms of your organization yet, I would suggest you look into it, because people who are engaged and supporting you now, maybe they can't give a big gift now, but it might be possible for them to leave you something in their will. And it's really that's a very good future-proofing way of fundraising for your organization. Tracking relationships. So once you've engaged with someone, you want to make sure to continue to engage with them and connect them with your organization and with you, because people will give to a cause that they believe in and a cause that's really important to them. But also, people give to people. And if you can build a great relationship with someone, then they are more likely to give to your organization. So as I've said before, I'm going to say it again, record their contact details. Anytime you meet someone, add them to your database and send them relevant mailings. But be careful adding them to mailing lists depending on where you meet them and where you get their email address from. Just check your GDPR requirements. But once you've got all that and it's okay because you met them at an event that they've signed up for, add them to the relevant groups, use tags to identify them, and make sure they're getting the right kind of engagement emails, because you might be sending different emails to donors who are given between £1 and £100, and you'll want to send different kinds of emails to people that you want to give at that major donor level. Record any networking activities. So this is what I talked about before: logging conversations, log personal details, log any anecdotes in your system, so that anytime you're going to speak to them, because it could take a couple of months or years of engagement and you're never going to remember anything, although maybe you will. Maybe you're that person. I wasn't. So definitely needed a good CRM to support logging all of that information. And then add them to a pipeline. If you've got a major donor pipeline tracker, set the steps and go back to it and refer to it and see who's at stage 1, see who's at stage 2, see who you've sent a proposal to. Have they got back to you? Do you need more information? Make sure you're tracking where you are with each individual and you don't forget about them. And again, set yourself tasks and reminders to continue the follow-up until they engage and they give. And then you have to continue anyway, because you want them to give year on year. So yes, you want to remind them to phone them, engage with them, send them emails, send them the right event invitations, all of those things. And I move on to my final tips after that whirlwind. So I would suggest, if you are new to directly working with major donors, then I would suggest practice meeting with donors who are not your main prospects. So go and meet with donors at the lower end of the opportunity scale, because they're still important to you, and go out for a coffee and practice doing your pitch, doing your spiel, and practice making the ask, because making the ask is the hardest thing. I've seen so many people do amazing meetings, can talk about their organization and all the great things that they do, but they'll leave the meeting without having said, will you donate? Will you donate? And sometimes, will you donate £1,000? And I would say, if you can ask for a specific amount, you're more likely to get a good result, because when you say, can you donate to my organization, it's just so wide open and you don't really know, you're not guiding them to what level that you would like them to consider. So again, having those friend, ambassador, patron levels that you can say to them, well, a friend gives £1,000, an ambassador gives £5,000, or saying we're specifically looking for money for this campaign where £2,000 will pay for this nurse. And, you know, it really putting specific amounts in front of people. I've just seen it makes a world of difference. Someone who was maybe going to give £500 will give £1,000 just because you put that in there in front of them. And as an extra note, I will also say that when it comes to asking for increases from donors. So that's another whole topic. But major donors who give year on year £5,000, £5,000, you know, eventually you'd like to ask them to increase their donation. But if you go to them and you say, will you increase your donation? Again, they suddenly panic and think, oh, maybe I need to give, you know, £10,000. Like, what are they asking for? If you say, oh, last year you gave £5,000, this year, would you consider giving £6,000? You know, it just puts a parameter in their mind. Maybe they will say yes. Maybe they'll negotiate with you and they'll give in the middle. That's okay. Maybe they'll say, no, I won't give anymore. But you've set that kind of expectation level that maybe next year they could think, well, maybe I'll try and give 6 next year, whatever it is. So I would always say ask for specific amounts where you can. And I'm going to finish this section by just touching on the 3 rules of fundraising that I learned when I was starting out from my mentor, David Goldberg, who is an excellent and fantastic fundraiser and still is. So rule number 1, if you don't ask, you don't get. And we all know that. But like I said, you actually have to do the ask. You have to make the ask. But also, if you do ask, the worst they can say is no. And that's really fine. It's really fine if someone says no. And they might not be saying no forever. It might just be no for now. And you can clarify that with them. But really, again, when you're having these interactions, if you don't ask, you will not get it. Don't be afraid to ask. The worst they can say is no. And the last point that really sticks with me is you are not asking for yourself. You are asking so that other people will benefit, because the money doesn't go to you. It's going to your organization to fund the amazing things that you do to support people or engage with people, whatever it is you're doing. You are not asking for yourself. So again, be brave and say the words, will you give £1,000 or whatever it may be? And if you're not feeling confident in that, practice with other donors at a lower level and build up your confidence. So I think I'm now going to stop talking and I'm going to hand over to Alex, who's going to just talk to you a little bit about our CRM system, CiviPlus, that could really support you with all of the things I've talked about today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Louise. Yes, so introducing CiviPlus. I think lots of the things we've discussed today really are very applicable within CiviPlus and really supported by CiviPlus. We've talked about it before, obviously. It's a fantastic, secure, accessible platform. It is based on this really enormously popular open source nonprofit CRM, CiviCRM, and it brings together all of the great features from that community, whilst also providing you with a fantastic CRM experience. You know, we've brought our own stuff to it as well as our own knowledge. So we've been working with it for over 10+ years, just making it really easy to use for everyone. Like, it's really, really powerful, but also making it very cost effective, because we know charities don't tend to have like unlimited budgets as much as we wish we all would. And it's all in one. It's just ready to use straight away out of the box. And it does a lot of different things. So within that, there's all, you know, Louise has talked a lot about contact management. And this is really the heart of any database. And within a CRM, you can manage your contacts and log all of the activities that you're doing that. So you can send the email to them if you want. You can track activities within that. You can see everything in one place all around the contacts. And you can take those really important online payments. So Online payments we've talked about before, and I'm sure we'll be talking about again in future webinars, but they are a massive thing that completely changed the game for any charity out there. And then you've got to be able to track your fundraising opportunities, which is exactly what we've been talking about today, the major donors. How do you're making a major donor pipeline. You actually do want a physical representation of that, or digital, you need to have it somewhere to look at. Other things you can do memberships if that's relevant to you. All the event stuff we've talked about today and we'll be talking about in the future is also something that you can organize within the platform, link it all back to your contacts, see who's attended, see which major donors have attended which event or signed up for future events, think of interactions. Maybe there's trends, maybe the major donors like coming to certain events you run, less keen on others, could tell you some interesting things that you could do with that. Case management, again, very similar to the fundraising opportunity management, just really powerful for processes. You can, keep track of all those activities, do loads of reports, surveys, amongst your major donors. Perhaps there's something that they're interested in, and you can find out what would inspire them to donate more. Sometimes just asking people certain targeted questions can get a lot of useful information that, again, as Louise said, if you don't ask, then they're definitely not going to give you it. So you could be missing out on some key insights. So that's a very useful feature. Volunteers, so you can manage volunteers. You could also kind of manage a process, if you like, of hosts. If your major donors are all, you've managed to inspire them all to host their own little events, that would be a great thing you could organize within the system. Track applicants, so if that's something that you want, you could also kind of track your own applications to various trusts and foundations, as we said earlier, which again is the next bit in here. Accounting integration links back into the online payments. You can keep track of all of your finances, of all of the things, all the donations these big major donors are bringing in. And finally, there's a self-service portal, which is an excellent bit of functionality, which is a big part of the plus in CiviPlus, and has lots of exciting features where your supporters can log in and access and see invoices of any donations they might make and other such things. So yeah, lots of amazing features. And I think next up, Louise, we have...
Actually, just before you move on, I will just add a little point to managing contacts. So something that CiviPlus is really, really good at is managing relationships. And I think what's really important, again, if you are nurturing someone to become a major donor, they might be interacting with several people within your organization. What if they're a volunteer? What if they're attending an event? And if you're the one trying to nurture that relationship, you want to make sure, or you want to be aware of all the other interactions they're having with any other part of the organization. And you can see all of that within the contact record, but you can also record the relationship that you have with them and add any other relationships they may have within the system, so that another colleague might look at the record and think, oh, before I speak to them, I better talk to Louise and check in, where she is, because I know she's nurturing that person. So it's really good for tracking everyone in your organization. So you're not bombarding them, but you're also kind of aware of what kind of other exposure they're having to your organization. So I would highlight that as a really key area in terms of managing the relationship. Yeah,
having that 360-degree view of the people that you're in contact with is a complete game changer, rather than scrabbling around spreadsheets or paper notes or however it is that traditionally people have kept track of major donors. It's completely different. And here you can see what the contact page looks like. So you can see we've got all of the basic stuff on the screen here, the basic information and the details. The exciting bit here is really on the sidebar. You can see all the different things about this person. Clearly, we've got a Marvel reference here, something that we like within the CiviPlus team. But you can see contributions they've made, if they're a membership, if they attended any events, any mass mailings you might have sent out, any cases they're involved in, if they're involved in any prospecting opportunities, the relationships they have with other people, if they're a member of a household, member of a trust, there's so many different opportunities you can kind of build out within this. Groups could go on for a long time about all the different things, but it's very exciting and lots of different things you can do within here to really understand your major donors and get to the heart of what inspires them to donate to you. And yes, worth saying that we also have some future webinars coming up next month about both emails and how to do craft great emails that your supporters will want to open, and also how to make events easier, as Louise has, of course, hinted at earlier in the webinar. So That will be all next month, and we're looking forward to seeing some of you again there.
Thanks, Alex. And so I'm just going to finish off by saying, we'd love to speak to you. Everybody is different. Every organization is different. So we'd love to really hear about your needs and organize a personalized demo to take you through the system to show you exactly how it could help you. Here's me. Jack is our lovely account manager. He's away on holiday, so that's why he's not here with us today, but he'll be back soon. So we'd also love to speak to you as well. So please feel free to reach out. And we will be sending a video recording of this webinar tomorrow with our contact information as well. So that's it, actually. So I think we're just about on time, so that's great. And I will ask, say thank you. And if there are any questions, be very happy to chat.
I don't have any questions, Louise, but thank you. I've got very good ideas there about how to use Civi to help with fundraising that I hadn't thought of before. So that's very useful today. Thank you, both of you.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear.
Yes.
Delighted. Thank you. Thank you so much. So yeah, I think unless there's any other thoughts or questions, I think we can stop the recording.